So if you go up to $5 million, you're taking up $3.5 million as non-reimbursable costs, and that becomes a big detriment to the project. And when you go to a bigger site with more wetlands, you're going to a lot more non-reimbursable costs. That's just the reality of what it is. The good thing about Templeton Center School, that's one of the things, I still put the big range on it. There's not a whole lot of sites to develop, so you're not going to, I still kept the $5 million, but it's very likely to be far into that range.
It's going to be out. You can't have any of that. Oh, yes, Kate. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm concerned about Baldwinville. I mean, I certainly don't like the idea of children spending 2 years in portable classrooms, but from what I've heard, and one of our members has done a thorough study of the Baldwinville Elementary School, and to depend on that school for another 2 years. This may not be a question for you because you may not be familiar, but perhaps the superintendent or the principal over there, whether this school is reliable enough that we also, of course, they could do Memorial in Phillipston. We could also move some of the children there, but I have some concerns about really leaving children for about 2 years from Templeton Center with the potential of not having adequate facilities.
I think anyone who knows those schools is concerned with having kids in there at all, and to any of your.
We don't have any choices. It's going to take 2 years to build, right?
There is no other choice.
I dare say any of the portables you brought up would be better than what we have right now.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, it's awful there.
And we did have portables at the high school for 20 years, and they worked quite well, and they lasted a long time, more than the expected lifespan.
Well, that's good.
Yes, sir.
I think if we don't do it now, we're never going to do it. But my question also is on the Brooks Road, the Baldwin Road property. Why can't we go into a consent and say if it costs more than this, that they have to deduct from the cost of the land? Why
Look
can't
at
we-
the development costs.
Yeah, why can't we do that? And then, because I think that's the only one on the school, all of these, that is the right one to do.
When was O'Brien on the select?
It's not on the main line with the school, it's water, sewer.
Did I see another hand from, yes, Doug?
On the Baldwinville Road property, has any evaluation, 21E, or any kind of contamination evaluations been done by the seller even?
Nothing.
No?
Yes, sure.
That, didn't we just have them in here? That property changed hands. So
No, he still owns it.
he still owns it?
He still owns it.
Never transferred.
Okay, then what did we do? We just changed the transfer of the license?
No, it was a move transfer of property.
Okay.
You want to talk about the property? You probably don't.
There was a potential buyer for the property several months ago, just if you don't mind, Ken.
Yeah, sure.
The board.
I can't hear you,
The
Kurt.
license, but with the stipulation that the property transfer, the property never transfers, therefore the license never transfers, so it's a moot point.
I missed that.
Can you hear that?
Can you say that just a little louder, Kurt, just for...
When Mr. Templeton here a few months ago to transfer a license pending the sale, the contingency of the license, of the transfer was contingent on the transfer of real estate. The real estate deal never fell apart, so therefore the transfer never.
Yeah, I
took place.
see it still
So
for sale.
It's actually on the term that was signed, so it's a moot point.
Okay, thank you.
Are they still current owners and license holders?
Thank you very much. If I could just ask one question, and again, I don't know who the correct responder to this would be, but, so let's say that we do all the work that's necessary for whatever project we pick to get to the point where we put it on a ballot and we have an election. If it's voted down, can we anticipate roughly what the not lost funds, but the funds that will be expended to get to that point that then kind of don't manifest into anything, what we would kind of be out and not have anything to show for it, basically?
Well, you approved at the April town meeting and vote another $500,000 to go on top of the $550,000 that was approved back in 2009. So you would be out $1 million. The state has reimbursed, as we heard earlier, about 60% of that cost as you've gone along. So let's say $450,000 would be out of pocket expenditures. It's worth noting, Ken, that It is not, if you were to bring, in my experience, and I have to go by protocol with the MSBA now, if you were to come forward again and go through all this process, you would be totally non-reimbursable from that point forward. The MSBA will go with you and say, we already went through this with you, we're not doing this again. They're not saying that you can't do this again, you can't reapply in 10 years, but the precedent right now is that, assuming you go forward in 10 years with a new project, that first phase of it is non-reimbursable.
Okay. And then, so would all of the site work that's necessary, the environmentals and whatnot, would that be included in then that $1 million that's already been?
The preliminary evaluation would be. But,
Okay.
But certainly the cleanup would not.
Oh, right, but,
So if I understand this correctly, you're saying the $550,000 that we spent for feasibility, we would need another $500,000 to end up going before the townspeople and request that, because we would have to do another feasibility study on any one of these properties?
You've already approved that one? So you have another $500,000 already available to finish the study?
That was for a schematic design.
That's right.
Oh, so the feasibility portion, you're saying we don't have to have more money for feasibility, it's just the design portion of it that we have already approved.
You would use the remaining balance of funds to evaluate whatever parcel you're doing and to do the schematic design, everything you need to get up to a vote.
Okay, so the $500,000 would be doing the schematic design and any additional feasibility?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, how much of the $1,050,000 that has been voted by the townspeople in Templeton has been expended?
I believe 550 or thereabouts.
Ms. Coble?
I know Crow Hill is very expensive, and I know the Baldwinville Road site could be as expensive as Crow Hill if there's a lot of cleanup from the salvage yard, and I don't think 1.5 million is going to be enough to clean up a salvage yard site. What's the tax burden as compared to, say, the Templeton Center versus Crow Hill per, year? Or what would it be? We're saying 120.
How much more?
How much more would it be for Crow Hill?
It's a lousy site.
That's a good question. I would have to find that out.
Mr. Morrison has a quick
He has
calculation.
a copy, yeah.
Do a quick calculation.
Just so I understand your question, I apologize for this, are you saying to take the salvage yard off the tax
No.
list?
No. I'm just saying, if we decide we want the salvage yard, and the cost to clean up is like triple what we're estimating. It's very similar to what we would have to pay at Crow Hill for site work. So are we really doing, I don't know if we're being wise in doing that. I know Crow Hill is expensive, but I don't know. I just think maybe that's what we need to do. It has all the pluses for us. I know.
Well, Crow Hill is off the table, I mean, the MSBA is not going to back you.
They're not, so that's off. Okay, so,
About $1.60.
Well, it's on here because it's our point of comparison is the only.
oh, okay, all right.
The full engineering.
What about the Brooks property? The original?
It's evaluated and it's got the wetlands.
By the time we get to the
It has
proposal, it's
wetlands
gonna be interesting.
So, okay.
It's going to be closer
So
to
are you
the
actually proposing a site? Because it sounds like there's sites that you don't want us to use, and there's sites that
I think
could
you-
possibly be used.
I think you've got two site options, the salvage yard or the TC site. And I
Then
think
why aren't
frankly-
those the ones that are highlighted?
Well, because this is your choice. And frankly, I think the $20 million question is the bigger question that I still haven't heard a clear answer on. Are you willing to take a $20 million number to the taxpayer?
Well, I think if that's what it is, I think, like, as you said, that the other option would be not taking it to the taxpayers and not having the school. I don't know as if we're going to ever be, we're not in the best situation to do that, no. But I don't think that we're going to be, as you said, in a better situation if we wait 5-10 years to kind of be here. And I don't know what we're going to do with the children in those, that are currently in those schools. We're kind of waiting for lawsuits now. So I don't know kind of where we're going to be in 5 years, 10 years, if we start the whole process over again. So at least for me personally, and I believe that ultimately, I believe but, the Board of Selectmen will have to make this decision, since we're the owners, going to be the owners and responsible for the property, that if we do not do this now, it's not like, we'll wait 2 years and things will be better and we'll kind of start all over again. That it's kind of a now or never situation, and if the taxpayers don't support it, then they don't support it. Their children will continue to attend the same schools that they've been in. That's ultimately their choice, but I think that giving taxpayers, at least for me personally, the option to finally move forward is the best option. And if it's voted down, it's voted down. I don't think that in 1 year's time, or 2 years, or 3 years, that the town's suddenly going to decide, have a change of heart and think that it's a good time to expend $1 million when it wasn't now. That's where I personally stand. My question, so you had pointed out Templeton Center and the MBW site. Do you know how many acres is the MBW site? I'm sorry.
23 acres.
23 acres. So my question then is, is the Brooks property on Baldwinville Road, even though that property is only estimated at being about $125,000 more, and I would agree with Ms. Kojal that the likely cleanup for the MBW site is going to be much more than what is there. Why is it that the Brooks property kind of isn't a preferred site? Because I know for me personally, that would be the site that I would be most likely to go with, is the Baldwinville Brooks.
So I didn't bring copies of what was presented 2 years ago, but I'll just kind of spin this around to folks. This is showing the wetlands that we're studying and why it was discounted several years ago.
But we still could do it, right, with that, for roughly that price.
You could do it, it'll take longer, and we don't know where parking would go, where the school would go, how anything would fit there.
That's why
Because of the wetlands, when that was presented, it was kind of like the school was over here, and there was a long walkway, and the parking was way over here. Because of the wetlands, they had to rearrange everything, so.
The wetlands is right in the center.
Yeah, and I don't believe there were areas for playgrounds and fields,
Gotcha.
unfortunately.
Yes.
So the center itself is going to be redone at some point, correct? Is that like in the up and coming, like Templeton?
Templeton's now redeveloped, yeah.
Weren't they going to rework the roads and?
That was originally part of it with like lighting and new lights and whatnot, but I don't know where that project currently stands.
Couldn't, like if we decided to, or if the town decided to go with the Templeton Center site, couldn't we add more parking? They had talked about maybe doing more parking across from the fire station.
I don't know, that's something we'll have to look at. I'm not sure as to where that currently stands. We haven't heard anything on it. I know that we originally saw plans, yeah.
I think we disbanded the Common Improvement
Okay.
Committee back like in the summer.
Lack of.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think we lack funds and other.
Well,
to do
yeah,
that,
of course. I just didn't know where it was stood.
Did I see you say, yes, sir.
I got a couple questions. One of the questions is, the Brooks property, what's the valuation, what's the taxes they pay on that piece of property versus MB&W for the year? What I'm just getting at is if you take one off the tax roll, that's dollars and figures too.
Right.
Do we know that number?
Not right now, but that would be something that we would have to, yeah.
Another thing is, do we have actually the paperwork on the Brooks property? Who did the wetland study and stuff like that, and flagging and stuff like that? Do we know who did that?
Yes.
And my other question, I just want to talk about there, is we can move wetlands, all right? We can mediate them somewhere else in some other area, so we ain't gonna make the school like around this and around that. It is possible to move those wetlands. Some can replicate them. Some, am I correct? Some of them, yes, we can.
Thank you. Is there, yes, Will?
My biggest concern is not so much about the school, but the time frame between now and a year from now. I'm thinking that we're looking at probably about $2 on the tax base to go up. And my biggest concern is not so much the need, is that whether or not through prior overrides, whether we can end up passing that.
Oh, right.
And that's a big concern for me, because I see that as $2, and we're struggling now, and we've had some even small overrides that we've been unable to to think and end up going through, and I just, a $2 increase would be very significant to a lot of folks here in town, and I don't have the answer for that.
I think, one thing I do have to say, and one kind of, depending on your view of things, for me, I would like the elementary school to move forward, so kind of a ray of sunshine for me is looking back in past overrides, yes, some have failed, but the fact that the $500,000 did just pass last year, or this year, earlier, last election, to move forward with the school, I think is maybe a sign that people are hopefully willing to, yes, it's a big increase in the taxes, but when there is a tangible result of that tax increase, like here you will have a $50 million, because that's really what the project is. It's about a $50 million project. They will have this capital improvement to the town that their grandchildren and children and friends' children will be able to use for if the other two schools are an example for the next 100 years. I think that may also, it's a little different than comparing this, the tax increase here to, let's say, raises or a new ambulance or other things that we may request overrides for. So that's why I think that maybe people are at a point now where they know that it's now or never, whereas with other overrides, such as the town shutting down, the town shut down for, the override failed, the town shut down for 6 weeks. I think a lot of people thought, even though, again, it wasn't my preference, thought, oh, look, life continues, and we didn't have any requests to put a $600,000 override back on. I think that people know that it's not going to be the same situation where we can kind of try not having a new elementary school for another 3 years and then throw it on the ballot and we can move forward. It's not going to be that kind of thing, yes.
Just as a question, if you don't move forward with the new elementary school, what capital expenses are going to be needed on the current buildings? So you're going to have a cost avoidance by not having to do that. So I think those numbers need to be looked at as well. So it's not that you're increasing by $2, you're also avoiding an increase anyway, because you're going to have to fund fixing those buildings.
Right. And something will ultimately, as we said, have to be done with those buildings. So even if the school does not move forward, and it's not a scare tactic, it is what it is, that as the OPM has said, that the condition of those schools, while we may look back and think, oh, well, when I went there it was fine and this and that compared, what the state does is they compare us to other school districts of average size and wealth. That's what they're going to compare us to, and when we are so far below that standard in terms of square footage per student, students in a classroom, that kind of thing, that ultimately we're going to have to do something with those schools. That's not a scare tactic. But at some point the state's not going to allow us to continue. For instance, in Baldwinville, where the nurse has to unplug her fan if she's going to plug in her computer so she doesn't short out one whole side of the building with electric. That's not going to be able to continue for another 5 years without there being some kind of intervention. Yes.
And I have walked through, and they're horrible. Like, I couldn't imagine going to those schools, never mind sending my kids or someone sending their kids to those schools.
Right. And I know I substitute taught while I was studying for the bar exam, and one of the schools I was in was Templeton Center, and while the staff and the students are wonderful, I was in shock even then, kind of with the condition, and that was, 5 years ago.
Yeah, the townspeople have always voted in favor of their children and their children's education. $2 is a lot of money. However, when we built the high school that we're currently using, the middle school, it was still a difficult time. We went out there, we knocked on doors, we said to people, this is what your children need to be educated, to live in the world that they're going to live in 25, 50 years from now. And they voted, both for this new middle school and the other. And the times were, again, they're always difficult times. But when you're talking about adding a school into the community, it's usually, it has in the past been supported. So not to give them a choice of this school at this time, which is the best time, might not be the best thing for our citizens. Right.
Yes.
Just a question. Are you assuming relocation is police department? I'm not able to tell from your map.
No, I'm not.
Yes.
On the Brooks Road property, the Matusalem property, why is that sort of discounted?
Only because of all the wetlands that are through there, and it looked like from the study that was done, the conclusions several years ago, that the inability to get anything close to each other, because of those wetlands, was such a problem. not a worthy school site.
But there's 33 buildable acres.
Reportedly, yes. It's just not contiguous, that's the problem.
So you're saying it's kind of spotty?
Yeah, if you look again at that plan I just showed, if it was in a corner or a sector.
No, she's talking about the other one.
Matt Savage
Yeah,
property.
this is the Dennis Savage property.
Oh.
Oh, we thought that was John Brooks' property.
Oh, no, John Brooks is the same, though, it's right next door.
So that, the one we're talking about now is the Brooks Road property.
Yes.
And that has too much wetland too?
Yeah, they both, that's the problem with both.
So they both are almost identical with the wetlands issue.
Wetlands won't.
Sorry, this is a very small
Cause cancer.
version of the previous one.
No, exactly.
Just the wetlands everywhere.
So it's right next, they're right next to each other?
I think they are.
I just really hate Templeton Center as a site.
Why it's on the
And that leaves, so you what do you have to choose the lesser of two evils? I feel like that's
How
always
much
the
more money, if the board voted to proceed with the Templeton Center School Plan, how much more feasibility money would it take to present a plan to the voters?
Question.
Well, to present to the voters the $500,000 that you have remaining.
And I'm sorry, there were two hands. Yes, I'll start with in the back and then Kirk.
Yes, with regard to the wetland cost impact on the Brooks Road, Mass Ave property, was there any consideration given for entering that property through the town barn? Which was suggested.
Again, it's the same issue.
Because you,
Just to
have a lot less wetland coming into that property.
We did not, if I can answer that, we did not study it for how anything would happen anywhere. I think the gentleman was pointing out that because the 5 different parcels of the town highway barn, there's different ways to get there. The town highway barn has wetlands all over their property as well, so I'm not sure that there's any, that showed on the study and it was evaluated back in 2005. And again, it was discounted, it was not usable. The conclusion, too costly, too difficult to use, is the conclusion that we reached several years ago.
Right, several years ago, it was not just access granted through some of the other lots on Brooks Road, which are not.
Yes.
Just to follow up on Mrs. Farrell's question, if it takes, what was it, Julie, $500,000? The other $500,000, would any of the, well, there's only one more site, would that take much more than the 500 that you just answered about Templeton
Well,
Center?
I think only one site can be pursued.
Correct.
And that will take $500,000. That we will work within the budget, yeah.
Well, there was another site you were looking at. If we're talking Templeton, Mrs. Farrell's question was on Templeton Center, how much more would it take? And that was the 500,000. That's the smallest amount that it would take to present a property to go?
To go through everything that has to be done to comply with the MSBA grants to bring it forward, it will take $500,000 for any of these options to do that. And
It won't take more?
His firm has been working with us for quite a while now, and he is the principal in his firm, and so, and he's generously said that regardless of which one we pick, he's going to work with us to make that $500,000 work, which is essentially $200,000 to the town because you get $300,000 reimbursed. So we came before you before and said we needed, because we did know that MSBA was not in favor of that site. In fact, he got beaten up a bit about it on our, and so he's trying to help you, but we came before you and we said we'd come back, which we are, and yes, it's going to take that money if you want to build a school, but because of his generosity, that's the only reason that any of these sites you could pick. We just really need you to make a decision, because that's why we stopped spending any money, because it's going to take every penny you have left to develop whichever one of these you choose. So I want you to choose wisely, and if you decide to choose, that's it. We can't, you're going to run out of money, and you're going to afford a project to the town to vote on. And so we just really want you to make sure that you're putting forward what you think can be passed by the taxpayers and afforded by the taxpayers. But I think we owe him, already owe him so much for keeping this project alive over the last few years.
Thanks. And one thing, and sorry, Craig, I'll get right to you. One thing I do want to point out too is when we're talking about costs, at least for me, I mean, the costs the costs are all around $20 million, right? So if Crow Hill is, we already know is out, other options are, 21.8, 21.2, 21.1, 19.8. So for me, at least, with this scope of a project, we're probably not going to be doing this again for another 50 years. So for me, to pick a less than, I shouldn't say ideal, because none of them are ideal, but a less than ideal location to try to save $200,000 or $300,000, at least for me, that's not how obviously I'll make my decision. It's more about what site we believe is the most workable. So because I want to make sure, so when we're discussing this, when you're not here, that I have it correctly. So from your point of view, you feel that the Brooks Road and the Brooks property, the Baldwinville property, are not feasible options?
No, I think that the Baldwinville is feasible.
So the Brooks property, Baldwinville Road?
No, the MBW.
Oh, that Baldwinville Road, I'm sorry, they're both, okay. So I'm talking about, so you believe the Brooks property and the Brooks Road?
From the studies that were done in 2012, from the discussions that took place, I believe that the Brooks property and the Brooks Road property were eliminated for good reasons. Based upon the conversations I've had with the engineers, they still feel like they are not good properties for the school.
And that's knowing like what the other options are?
Knowing what they are. And nobody knows the MBW site, what the true implications are of that, other than the high-level conversations that we've had tonight. Because work has been done there, it's likely that it's contaminated in some way, and will cost something to clean up. Who bears the cost of that?
We do.
Cleanup is a question, and part of the negotiation.
Would it be possible or no that the level of contamination rises to such a level that we can't use the site?
Yes.
So it's possible that, okay. Yes, Kirk, I know you've been.
That's one of the reasons that I don't understand the special site costs is both the Brooks property and the Matasavage property are listed at $750 to $1 million more cost than the MBW site, and we're giving zero consideration in regards to any kind of cleanup in that special cost provision.
Right.
Yeah, the issue, if I can respond to that,
Sure.
the issue is the wetlands. We know we have wetlands to deal with that are going to cost probably $1 million to start building or somewhere thereabouts. With the Brooks Road properties, we don't have wetlands as far as we know at the MBW site, except on the rear of the skidding area. That's where the wetlands start. And we believe that that gives about, maybe 10 to 15 usable acres. It is certainly enough to do something with an elementary school. But then the question is the contaminants. And we have no idea. Is there anything?
But it really bothers me inside. It really does.
Yes, Kirk, sorry, you've been waiting. Sorry.
I think, just sitting here listening to everybody talk, everybody's on the same page as far as why we're all here. We don't really have a choice, we kicked the can long enough, but I don't know if you guys realize, the reason why we came here tonight was to make the decision, because if not tonight, as the town fathers, no pressure, but pick one, and we all go home. Because the committee has been, I've only been on it for a couple of years, but the committee, and this Whitaker, and his company and whatnot, the town's already spent $500,000, we've already appropriated the other $500,000. We're not gonna spend any of it on all of these, we're gonna spend all of it on one of these to give to the voters.
Right.
And so, if you want to narrow it down to 2, then we'll see you all next week, but how often can we get this many people in the room to kind of talk about it?
All right.
So constructive criticism, myself with my developer hat on, if you want to say, okay, Templeton Center and plus another one, have a contingency on it. Go to whether it be the Matasavages or go to the Putnam and say, okay, if you can provide us with this, and I'm just saying Putnam, they're going to keep saying it's a polluted site. Does anybody right here take your life on it's a polluted site?
Oh, no.
I don't think so. And so just be careful what you say about somebody's property, because I just hear a lot of slanderous action towards MBW salvage. How do you know we don't go up there, or better yet, Mr. Putnam doesn't hire a reputable company to go up there, do a 21E test, and prove it clean? And I'll bring up, I know it's a soft subject in this town, 252 Marlborough Road got tanked out because it was a polluted plutonium disposal site, and what happened? The town did a 21E test and came back perfectly clean, and then now it's selling. Okay, so I think everybody just got accusing or there's all these wild accusations that the site is polluted, or has, or,
saying it might be.
let me say, wetlands are already on the map. But the board, as the town fathers, you guys are the only ones, I'm one chairman of the committee, but it's an appointed committee, as well as all the other members that are here, are on that committee, we're appointed. If you want to give us tonight the authority to say, no, you guys go and pick one and move forward with it, let us know what you choose, fine, so be it. So tell us tonight.
Yeah.
If not, pick one tonight.
Well, yeah, first of all, I don't think anyone is saying that is contaminated. I think that the contamination is an issue because it's the only site presented that we know that could, it has the highest likelihood of having an issue, just because Templeton Center School obviously already has students in it, Crow Hill, there's nothing on, and the other two properties contain wetlands. So we just know that that is a potential. So we are thinking worst-case scenario, because that seems to often be what happens, is worst-case scenario. So, no one's alleging that the property is contaminated, but we're saying that that is an issue that will need to be resolved, I guess, moving forward. Yes?
Even in my eyes, if we end up looking at the Baldwinsville property, MBW's, that should be contingent upon them doing a 21E and not getting to the same thing we did with 252. We bought that property without a 21E. It was done after. It was after the fact. We could have run into problems. So if you did choose that as fathers, per se, I would think that you'd want to take and do a 21E, saying the property has got problems or not got problems, and we'll know at that particular time before we make the purchase.
Yes.
The committee has done a lot of work, and they've made some nice presentation. I'm just wondering, are they making a recommendation for a particular site? They're the most knowledge on all of this, and I hear, these are the sites and here's the proposal, but I didn't hear a recommendation as to, we would recommend this site, and here's why.
Right. Does the elementary school committee have a, yes? Yeah.
It's not the first time we've actually, since the RFPs went out, and we only received two, Manus Adams and Buttons. This is the first time we've actually got together as a committee, with Jonathan and his handful, to evaluate, sign or whatever, just kind of pull something together to come here with cost analysis, so. This is the first time we've heard it as well.
Yes.
In light of that information, I think it would be appropriate for the elementary school building committee to meet and then make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. This is a lot of information. We all just got this today. And our next meeting will be November 10th. Is that going to blow the timeline out of the water?
Well, I think we can talk about it, but I think what we're hearing is a consensus around pursuing the MBW site to a fuller level. They won't do a 21A. If the 21A is going to be the catch-all, then it's probably going to take months to do. It's not going to happen for months, and that's fine.
That wasn't my question. My question was...
I don't think there's going to be any more information that can come to you on November 10th.
Well, I think a recommendation from the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee would be useful to the Board of Selectmen, upon which to base their decision.
And I would agree, because that's why we have that's one of the purposes of the elementary school building committee, is for them to make a decision. So I think if I can just maybe rephrase Mrs. Farrell's question, if we wait, and I understand not wanting to kick the can down the road, but this isn't just kicking it down to kick it down and put it off, this is so we can get a recommendation from the committee, would there be any change in, is it going to... Oh, sorry. Nice job. Is it going to negatively impact the project if we wait till November 10th? And if it is, we could consider meeting next week to, you know what I mean, to make a decision. But if it's not going to sink the project, I think that before giving the voters, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to not have any additional reasons for the voters to vote no. So I think that if the headline in the papers is, Board of Selectmen moves forward without recommendation of the school, even though it may not be relevant, any talking point that will give people a reason to vote no, I would like to avoid. So if waiting till the 10th, we can say the school committee, the elementary school committee made the recommendation, the Board of Selectmen agreed with them or didn't, but hopefully if we agree with them, that adds more strength to taking it to the voters to say this is the project.
And I totally get that, Ms. Farrell, your point as well. I guess my point is, it sounds, to me, the most important thing for tonight was for you to really understand the order of magnitude of the cost.
Right.
And if you're over that, and that's a big pill to swallow, but if you're saying, we want to keep going, then I think what you're describing are the important next steps. Let's examine, is MBW truly a feasible site or not? That's the most fundamental question. I think you're all asking, and we ought to take a step. I'm not sure by the 10th if we have anything more on that. I think the building committee will want answers to all the questions you're asking, so that we go and we talk to them about the 21A and we see what information we can gather quickly, and when that's ready, we'll bring it forward.
And I know we have 2 more questions, and I'll get to them in 1 second. So that may be something that, that after these 2 statements, I would, of course, be willing to, if anyone from the Board of Selectmen wanted to make a motion so that we are on the record requesting and take a vote that we request that the elementary school building committee make a recommendation to us so that we can evaluate all the options in front of us and move forward with making a decision of some kind, soon, so that we have something on the record kind of showing that the Board of Selectmen wants to move forward with at least seeing what our options are, and then I would, of course, accept that motion, but I'll take these 2. Yep.
Mr. Chairman, you have, I don't know if you have all of your members of the building committee here, but could we recess for 10 minutes for them to caucus?
It's not posted.
Oh, is it posted? Well, it is posted. It's posted, so they're allowed to. This is a posted meeting for them.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to have a special meeting to run some brainstorm issues that were brought up tonight, the school building committee, hopefully this week or next.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of questions we'd like to ask John.
Oh, right.
So that he could get back to us. I'll make a quick decision
Right.
now. And we're at it later.
Gotcha. And did you, was? Okay, great. So do I have a motion to request a recommendation from the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee regarding which project to move forward with, if that's what you're doing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So I have a first and a second. Any further discussion from the board? If not, Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Julie? Diane? And I vote yes. So you have a unanimous decision that we request that, and whatever our next meeting is after you have that, if it's the 10th, great, but if you have a decision by the 10th, we won't put it off past the 10th. If you need another week, we'll take your lead as to when you would like us to vote. Well, I would like to thank you very much for coming in and taking all of our questions. We appreciate all your work on this. As far as I see, I believe that this concludes the agenda items that we had for the Board of Selectmen still has business on the agenda, but as far as I see, this concludes the agenda items for the advisory board and the school committee. I will leave it obviously to their respective chairs to.
Okay. Can we take a short recess?
Yep, and we'll take a short recess as well, Board of Selectmen. Okay, sure. Gotcha. Okay.